So again, it's my pleasure to introduce our 4 distinguished panelists today. We have, sorry, I cannot, we have Saima Nazir Khan, that she is like, I need to check. Thank you, Saima. She's a Deputy Director, Research and Policy for the Ministry of Climate Change. We also have another panelist, is Lisa Lang. She's a disaster risk management specialist from the World Bank. But before that, also, I want to mention that Saima, she has like more than 15 years of experience for climate adaptation and mitigation and development policy. And our colleague, Lisa Lang from the World Bank, she is working in disaster and resilience programming in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and she's also leading the housing and reconstruction project in Sindh. Then also we have our colleague from Nepal, Vibek Manandhar, that he is like consortium manager for RAIN. And Vibek leads multi-partner programs that connect climate adaptation, mitigation, and inclusive service delivery, linking safe shelter, nature-based solutions, early action, and government systems at local and provincial level. And then, last but not least, we have Simi Kanwal. She's the chairperson and CEO for HISAAR Foundation here in Pakistan. And also, like Simi is the co-founder of Panjwani HISAAR Water Institute at Net University. She also sits on several international boards, founder of several platforms, committees, and organisms in both private and civil society. And finally, me, I'm facilitating this session, Eva Suarez, and I work for Catholic Relief Services. A pleasure to be here. Just a quick overview of this session. Saima, she's going to be presenting from a policy and governance perspective, focusing on sector policies and system-based approaches for future programming. Then Lisa Lang from the World Bank, she will provide us with an overview of institutional programming and engagement with the government. And then Vibek Manandhar from RAIN will present on long-term adaptation combined with short, high-impact community-level actions. And Simi, she will reflect on why water is essential in Nexus. So now I'm going to leave the floor to Saima. Please, Saima.
Good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Saima from Ministry of Climate Change. I serve as the Deputy Director, Research and Policy, Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination, Islamabad. It's my privilege to be here at this important forum. First of all, I would like to thank SPHF, Sindh government, and plus all the donors, EC Mode, and there are a number of donors. All of them really thankful for providing us this very important platform, which was actually the need of our when we need this platform. So I'll, keeping in the view the time constraint, I'll switch to the topic, which is of very importance. Okay, today we will talk about nexusing, scaling climate adaptation and mitigation in programming. So if you look at what's the nexus is really, it means that you can see on the rightmost side the climate change drivers, which are actually driving our climate changes, deforestation, energy sector, industrial production. As a right, if you look at the right side, you can see the climate change effects, which are because of these drivers. And if you look at the bottom two lines, you will see two solutions that are climate change, mitigation and adaptation. Today we'll talk about how we can nexus this, not as an individual or in silo, but today we will combine these two solutions, that is adaptation and mitigation, and program them in our national policies and frameworks and sector plans to get the sustainable. So integrating resilience and emission reduction for sustainable development is actually the today's session we are going to discuss. So what is actually the adaptation and mitigation nexus? It is an integrated approach when we are addressing climate risk and emissions together. We are moving behind now the silos in climate interventions. This is because we want to have a maximized co-benefit for development and sustainable development. So it means that we will be designing and implementing climate initiatives that simultaneously reduces the greenhouse gases as well as strengthen the resilience of resilience, that is climate adaptation, and then embedding these integrated approach across the policies, sector plans, and development projects. So why scaling and nexing matter? Because it improves the efficiency of climate finance, it avoids the maladaptation, it supports the SDGs and national development priorities, it strengthens the resilience while reducing the emission. So by combining or nexing these both options, we are actually improving our efficiencies, we are avoiding maladaptation, we are supporting for SDGs and national developments. What does scaling up involve? Number one, policy governance. We need to integrate for the policy integration across the sectors. We need to have a programmatic mainstreaming in development planning. We need to have institutional coordination, and we need to have sustainable financial mechanisms, financing. So if I talk about operational framework for this nexus, it will be start from, first we need to have joint risk and emission assessments, because we are combining mitigation and adaptation. We must know what are the risks and what will be the emission assessment. We will be identify what will be the dual benefits for the intervention. We must have cost benefit analysis. We must have co-benefit analysis, and finally we should have monitoring and evaluation for this. If in case of Pakistan, we talk about the major stakeholders that could be for institutional anchors will be the Ministry of Climate Change, Ministry of Planning, Development Special Initiative, provincial departments, of course, their planning departments and development partners, climate funds, etc. This is basically representing a picture that shows the Pakistan governance policy framework for calling on climate adaptation and mitigation together in a nexus, or how we are programming it. So we have policy frameworks in the form of National Climate Change Policy, NDC3, NABs. These all our documents already provide us a baseline for integrating these two subjects within the same programming or same interventions. So, and if we talk about institutional programming, we have like we have CPIMA. CPIMA is a tool under IMF which is helping us to integrate the climate action within our development framework, public sector development, ADPs, and other processes. Then we have green building bylaws, codes, which we are also integrating by local government. Then we have climate change prosperity plan, which is giving a very detailed aspects about nexus of mitigation and adaptation to that. So we have water focus approaches, because we are very very vulnerable to climate change, especially the floods which are affecting our country. So we are for water focus approaches. We are in process to progress for community-led intervention, because community-led interventions are very much important, and without the community involvement within it, it is a failure. And so all these are already set and we are in process. Today I was also very happy to meet here the local community of SPHF project, and I talked to them, and it was really nice to hear from them the feedback. I have really appreciated the government of Sindh for that initiative. If we talk about the Pakistan, we have NDC3, which is the most updated document submitted at UNFCCC. It clearly lines up our adaptation and mitigation priorities within the sector and areas, like we can go for renewable energy, sustainable transport, smart agriculture, forestry, afforestry, and waste management within the mitigation. Similarly, for water, disaster management, and health, And ecosystem protection, we have adaptation priorities. But NDC3, which is 50% reduction in GHG emissions with 17% unconditional and 33% conditional with international support. So this is an overview of what are the priorities of Pakistan for mitigation and adaptation. Now I'll put a little bit glimpse for what CPMA is and what government is actually doing with this tool. CPMA is an IMF tool which is actually helping the government to integrate or to emerge or to include or make more inclusive the government projects and initiatives which are taken up by the planning. If we talk about PSTP, public sector development projects or ADPs, then we have CPMA. This is a new exercise that actually Ministry of Planning is leading, in which we are developing a tool which will help in designing the PC1 that will have integrated climate action within it, and it is a real tool that will actually cover the nexus of adaptation and mitigation within it. And we will have a responsible climate resilient projects in the future. So this is an exercise which is happening at the federal level. Ministry Planning is the lead for that. So in this, we are integrating adaptation and mitigation within our investments cycle, and it is prioritizing climate related investments, and we are making a baseline for making and planning our finance with more responsibility toward climate resilience. Okay, now what are the key barriers in all this process when we are moving toward this nexus? Number one is fragmented governance. After 18 amendments, maybe the local government sitting here are aware, 18 amendments and the devolution of subjects, we have a little bit fragmented governance. This is leading to weaken the coordination mechanism, which we need to strengthen more. And in this, the provincial governments are the very important because they are on ground and they are the real people who are in the field. So without consulting them or without integrating them, we cannot drive or we cannot make any initiative. So we need a good coordination to remove this barrier for fragmented government. Then we have limited technical capacities. Yes, for sure. The subject is new for us, for the provincial government. So we need a lot of technical capacity, human resource capacity, capacity in terms of technologies to address these gaps and to train the people how they can make climate resilient initiative projects and programs. Weak policy integration, yes, we have tried to integrate, but still it is weak because we are in process of integrating it within our provincial policies. So it's still weak and we need to improve a lot. So we have data and knowledge gap. We have a lot of data and knowledge gap. Data is there, but it is not coordinated, and that's why we have data and knowledge gap, which are very much needed. Like we need MRVs, we need data collection, we need emission data, so that we can use it for coming up climate finance and other options for a project. We have social inequity, for sure. There are some barriers for inclusivity of social equity, gender, vulnerable groups that are always priority, but still it's a gap and we need to. These are some of the practical solutions. And these are some of the practical solutions that I propose that we need to align within our policy document. We need to conduct risk and vulnerability assessment. We need to promote Nexus for integrated approach. We need to strengthen data monitoring. We need to mobilize finances. We need to have capacity building. And last but not least, we need to foster partnership with donors and regional collaborations. This is again the same thing. Finally, we need financing investments, we need technical assistance, we need knowledge and global best practices, we need policy and planning support, and data and monitoring systems. So thank you so much. Climate solutions are more effective when they are coordinated, inclusive, and grounded into long-term system resilience. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Saima. No, and thanks also for respecting the timing, and it was a great presentation. Now I'm going to hand over to Lisa Lan. Please, Lisa.
I hope you can hear me well. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa. I'm a DRM specialist with the World Bank. I don't have a presentation today. I'm just here to maybe share a little bit of what I learned on integrating disaster resilience into the programs, into banks' projects. And I hope maybe some of the lessons learned can be helpful, and we are happy to exchange more in terms of what you are doing through your organization as well. I joined the bank in 2016. That's when the Paris alignment ratified. At that time, I was based in Washington, D.C. My only job was to think about how to mainstream NDC and the climate into World Bank's project. After 2 years working on this, I meet with development practitioners in the bank. Still, a lot of people don't even know about NDC. And this is when we really started to think about mainstreaming climate into operations, right? And gradually, we build internal capacity, similar to what Saima said. Just like government, we also have our own organizational compliance. So we look at climate screening, we look at co-benefits, basically rating every project on how much finance you're putting into adaptation mitigation as an incentive to promote climate integration into the project. So I worked on the compliance side as the grader of all the projects. But to be very honest, after working on it for a while, I realized I am not truly understanding when we say, okay, climate smart agriculture, community-based DRM. What does it really mean? Like, what are we really doing on the ground on climate, right? So that inspired me to really support operations on the ground. I moved to Pakistan in 2022. Initially, I was more focusing on analytics and looking at the synergies between development operations and the climate to really understand, okay, what's the relationship between the two? Because oftentimes it seems a separate thing. Development is development, climate is just adds-on. Good to have, requires a lot of international finance, right? So that was the misconcept, right? When we started to look into the different sectoral development for Pakistan, we realized they actually go hand in hand. You cannot talk about development without talking about renewable energy. That's mitigation. You cannot talk about community resilience without early warning system. That's adaptation. You have nature-based solution, which can drive employment, drive livelihoods development. Those goes hand in hand, right? So climate, I realized later on that it's actually not a separate concept. It's part of the thinking of adaptation, resilience, but also as part of the socio-economic development. And I had the pleasure of joining the bank's project in Sindh after the 2022 flood to do the housing reconstruction effort. I learned a lot throughout this process. And I also worked a lot on the ground and seeing how things are working on the ground. And I can tell you, this is not a perfect, nothing is perfect, but there's a lot of good lesson learned here in terms of adaptation integration. There are 3 things that I think are really the funding pillars for why this project was successful. When we think about the housing reconstruction, we were not just looking at houses. I remember the first thing I heard from my task team leader when he told me, he said, look, housing reconstruction is not an infrastructure project. This is a social project. At that time, I was very puzzled. I said, we're just building houses. What do you mean this is a social project, right? And it turns out that without the mobilization of the communities and have them being part of the process, it was impossible. In order to kind of bring them in, it requires a lot of social mobilization, sensitization. That created challenge, but that also created opportunity. You're able to collectively provide a solution that is sustainable. So the project supported in 3 areas. One is that we looked into not just rebuilding in the same location. We looked at the hazardous areas for flood in the next 50 to 100 years. Right? For the houses relocated in hazardous areas, we have proposed shifting to other safer areas as a way to reduce the exposure for the housing reconstruction. Number 2 is we introduced these minimum guiding principles for the housing reconstruction to address the risk associated with flood, with heat, which are very prominent in Sindh. And these will be different in other country or in other contexts, right? So you really have to have customized adaptation thinking in the housing reconstruction. So the minimum guideline provided good examples for how communities can improve their lives, improve their houses, and improving their lives. They also applied a lot of locally learned knowledge and technology. They applied sustainable materials, stone masonry, which emerged from the local areas. They used mud plastering where it's possible to protect the thermal comfort of the house, and they implemented cross-ventilation as a way to improve thermal comfort. A lot of innovation happened here. And we see that a lot of the new houses that are not supported by the government now are adopting these methods into their construction. And the third part is that we started to build capacity to the local masons on these resilient reconstruction principles so that they can apply that to their projects, to their work, which is beyond the housing reconstruction, and also on universal accessibility integration. So that ensured there is a level of sustainability and knowledge transfer to ensure sustainability of other construction efforts on the ground. And I'll give you another example. I also work in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan also suffers from recurring floods, earthquakes, and drought in the country. In 2025, they had a very bad flash flood in the northern and the western part of the country. So we work a lot with the hydromet agencies to understand, how does information flow, right? So they do produce good flash flood forecasting, and they produce weather forecasts. However, that information does not really trickle down to the communities. When we did a localized survey, we learned that in the rural areas, less than 4% of people receive any type of early warning. This includes both informal and formal type of information. And majority of that is based on local help, like people in the areas telling you, okay, look, there's a flood, you have to evacuate, you have to go to a safer area. People in the rural area, they will shoot guns to alert everyone nearby that, okay, there's this risk happening and you need to take action. So are we doing the right project? Are we investing in the right investment, right? Because when we talk about early warning system, what we typically do is focus on, okay, putting in radar, putting in hydromet stations, but are we really investing in things that will change people's life? Because we forget that the reason for having an early warning system is to save lives, is to help support livelihoods. It's not to have a fancy equipment sitting at my department and collect data, even if that's accurate, right? So that actually opened our eyes in terms of the areas that we need to shift in terms of our focus. So now a lot of the programs are shifting toward last mile connectivity, really thinking through how can we transmit information to the beneficiaries in the rural area, especially where there's low connectivity to internet, very limited signals from cell towers. What can we do? Can we do a layering dissemination method to ensure the information is transferred? So these are just some examples I would like to share with you. I think now the overall trend is that for every single project, we are looking at opportunities to integrate adaptation and mitigation into our programming. Of course, we have larger kind of climate goals and climate commitment, but it really takes every single task team leaders to think hard about what can be done differently. Sometimes it's not costly. Sometimes it doesn't require a lot of incremental cost to really shift things and move things. It just takes innovation and really understanding who you're working with and how can you serve the people better. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. And now, in the interest of time, I'm gonna also call Vibek.
Thank you very much, Eva. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vibek Manandhar, and I'm working as a consortium manager for the RAIN program at People in Need in Nepal. So, first of all, I would like to thank especially my peers who spoke before me, because I was planning to shift the conversation from larger frameworks to international financial mechanisms and discussions on policy architecture to ground level interventions. But I heard Saima speak about programs not being possible without community interventions, and also Lisa talking about last mile communication and the growing realization of the importance of it. So I'm feeling like half of my work is already done here. So my talk is also going to focus on shifting from higher level programming to highlighting the importance of especially the community level adaptations being tested, refined, and owned at the community level for them to be really effective in improving the community resilience of the people. So first of all, I would like to very briefly talk about the program that I'm managing right now. So this is an FCDO-funded project focused on climate resilience and improving governmental systems, which also focuses on early warning systems and adaptation, all the while focusing on localization and inclusion principles. So we're working with 2 provinces and 26 local governments directly. And one of our approaches that is at the heart of the program are these community-based co-creation engagements. So this is one of the examples that I'm going to use of the program, one of the 2 examples that I'm going to use, which we use to really ground our intervention. So these are these community-based co-creation events in the form of workshops where a diverse set of local stakeholders take part, including the local governments in the form of mayors, ward chiefs, and other diverse community members. So they come together, and what they do is they discuss amongst themselves not only the problems due to climate change that they face, but most importantly, the solutions that they have in their minds. So this leverages their local knowledge and combined with the technical knowledge that other external stakeholders might have. So what they do is they share their lived experiences combined with their generational knowledge as well, and all the while giving importance to nature-based solutions. So what is again crucial is that these discussions are inclusive, and the marginalized voices, which are often left out of these conversations, participate in it. So what we do from our program is we facilitate these discussions and try and bring out the marginalized voices and make sure that they don't just be present there as a bystander, but they actively participate in shaping their adaptation interventions as well. So more often than not, when we talk about localization, we focus more on listening to the problems from the community. But when it comes to solutions, we still think of the idea like the solutions should come from the experts, right? So what we do differently in these interventions is we also seek solutions directly from the community and let them give the means to come up with these very intricate adaptation solutions. So a very encouraging thing at these events is also that the local governments find these platforms as very efficient platforms to pledge their co-fundings as well. When they see people getting very excited and getting hands-on and seeing the effects of these very low budget and immediate impact interventions, they feel very encouraged to pledge their co-fundings in these events as well. And this kind of forms a loop of a good feedback loop where the government funds and the people will become more satisfied with their governments, and it again in turn encourages the local governments to continue with the co-fundings through other programs. So now I move towards these bigger high budget, high risk interventions that we are also doing through the program. So these are in the form of safe shelters. So we're building 4 safe shelters in the Madhesh province of Nepal. So these are relatively higher budget, takes more planning, is riskier and requires some more technical input. But having said that, we also ground these interventions to the community as well. So the community participates directly in the actual design of these safe shelters, and that makes it all the more important to make these safe shelters inclusive. For example, we have gender segregated halls, inclusive washrooms, code compliant facilities, including supplies for emergency facilities, and also things like breastfeeding rooms and others. So although these are bigger interventions, these ideas also stem from these smaller community interactions that I talked about earlier. So again, so these shelters are again multi-purpose, so they don't only serve as shelters during disasters, but also as immunization camp locations, for example. So what do these 2 examples show us is that for effective delivery of adaptation interventions, we can start small. So the entry points can be small. These small budget interventions are used, created through co-creation, where the community gets involved in it, and they really feel that they own these interventions as well, and then co-funding gets accelerated because it is really effective, and these are very small, tiny things that the community can design, invest, and feel the effects of immediately. So using these very small interventions, we can again drive these bigger interventions as well, like the safe shelters that I talked about. So co-funding really accelerates seeing the effects on the ground, and this really encourages the governments to follow up on the promises as well. So this would be my time. Thank you very much. We'll follow up.
Thanks a lot, Vibek. And now, when you are ready, Simi.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. It's nice for me to see so many familiar faces in the audience. So I would like to begin by talking a little bit about what Nexus scaling actually means. And we have seen different manifestations of that in the 3 presentations that have been made. So in the years between 2000 and 2010, we used to talk about the WEF Nexus, which was first Water, Environment and Food Nexus, and then it became Water, Energy and Food Nexus. Some of you will remember. You will remember, Mustafa. So when we were working at the ground, we would often refer to this. This is before the term climate change became very fashionable and came on the tips of everybody's tongues. And then with the work of IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, all those scientists who worked so hard, they were well respected, and when they began to bring out their reports, that's when the world began to take climate change seriously, including at least some governments, if not all. So after that, the word climate became part of Nexus thinking. So we had climate, energy, and food. We had climate, environment, and water. We had water, environment, and climate. And then, of course, we began to talk about how climate became, all the Nexus thinking had climate in it. And so it became like a mother of all Nexuses. And I remember at that time when I was talking to younger people and trying to explain to them what Nexus actually means. So it was a kind of new word that had come into the development language and the development jargon. So I used to say that Nexus is like the Pamir knot. And from Pamir knot, we have the Himalayas, we have the Hindu Kush, and we have the Karakoram. So these are the different kinds of important things that take off from a nexus. So when we begin to talk about mitigation, adaptation, and resilience nexus, which is what we are talking about today, in my own view, as a geographer, as an hydrologist who's been working in this for 40 plus years now, I really believe that the age of mitigation is already gone. I don't think we can do much mitigation now. It has remained in the jargon because it came about at that time, and it takes a while to eject terminology from the way we speak. But we had a window until 2024, according to the IPCC scientists, when the world could have taken certain drastic actions to try to stop to stop climate change or large parts of climate change by taking those very hard decisions, but they were not made. And we began to continue to do lip service. We argued about net zero. We've argued about whether it is 1.5 or whether it is 2. Even at 2 degrees, large parts of the world will not be able to support human habitation. We understand that. So given all of this situation, I think if we want to be really serious, we need to understand that the mitigation is gone. Mitigation means that you can lessen the impact of climate change. We are really not able to do that. The climate change is galloping ahead, but so now all we can do is adapt. And when we say that we want to adapt, we have to see where the impacts of climate change is the most. And it is the most on water, because we have boiling oceans, we have melting glaciers, we have rivers losing their courses, we have the whole water cycle disturbed, the whole global air and water system, all the ocean currents that have kept certain ports working and that have allowed goods and people to move, all of those are very severely affected. And small little changes in terms of the temperature and the direction of these ocean currents can lead to huge changes. What else is happening is that we had another nexus that was very important, which we can refer to as the natural regions of the world. So there was the nexus between the climate there, the temperatures, the water systems, what kind of vegetation could grow there, and based on these, what kind of agriculture, industry, and human settlements grow there. So, we have about 16 natural regions in the world, and they are all severely disturbed at the moment. For example, the prairies and the steppe were known for producing corn and wheat, and those are undergoing different changes. In our own areas, after 200 years of colonialism, we have lost all our variety of seeds. And we went from multiculture to monoculture, and look at the soils that are happening now. So where is that nexus between soil and water and production? So nexus is a very interesting way to think about interdependency amongst factors which we often think of as separate. So I think in that way it's very helpful. And now we come to about nexus scaling, which is what the World Bank and ADB, a lot of other people are talking about. So what does nexus scaling actually mean? For me, it's a very difficult concept to either internalize or to express and to give examples of this. Actually, where I have seen nexus thinking actually working is only at the grassroots, because there, for people, food production, consumption, local water, the local changes, barish hui, nahi hui, you get drought one year, they lose their crops. There you can actually see this nexus at work. But as you go upper on the scales, it is harder and harder to understand how we could use nexus thinking as a very important tool. So now, when we talk about living environment, living conditions, and climate change, which is, of course, something of great concern to this conference, I would urge you to go and see today's newspaper, just forgotten its name, I'll just Tribune. Go to see today's Tribune. It's an English language newspaper, and there is an article there by my friend Mr. S.N. Lagari, in which he's talking about why do floods affect the same people all the time. Because they are poor, because they are displaced, because they are put into marginalized lands. That is the real discussion that we must focus on, and we have to be careful not to put more and more burden on the community to co-create, to give up more and more, to be the people who have to adapt all the time. Why? Because the people who are causing all of this are people other than communities, and we have to do what is called now a people's charter or people's movement to bring them to justice and to stop them doing what they are doing. So we must remember that last century was all about throwing greenhouse gases and all kinds of pollution into the atmosphere, and because of which we are now facing what is happening. This century has to be about much more than just carbon credits and showcasing or greenwashing. We need to get very, very serious. And if you're going to talk about really taking or scaling up adaptation, I think in programming, we can do that. We can talk about resilience, which can be done, but I think we should not waste too much of our time on still talking about mitigation. I don't think we can stop what is happening now, and the world is on a downward spiral, and our next generations will have to put up with that. But I think we need to accept what there is so we can take the right decisions. So I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Big thanks, Simi, and thanks to all the panelists, Saima, Simi, Lisa, and Vibek, for sharing also your passion for climate. And now, I think we have some time left. So yes, please, questions. Please.
Assalamualaikum. This is Shah Rukh Khan from GZ, and wonderful comments by all of the panelists. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on something that I feel in terms of when we're talking about the Nexus approach, and this has become sort of talk of the town since a few years. But the climate aspect, as all of you mentioned and Ms. Simi mentioned, that it's become part of all the Nexus approaches that we think of. But do you think that in terms of scaling up the climate aspect in say food, water, and climate nexus, or peace, security, and climate nexus, the climate part is sort of in some cases just a good to have, and it's not stressed on as much as the other aspects when we talk about scaling up. In certain cases, not in all, but in certain cases, I think it definitely is played down a bit.
Okay, so as I said, climate is part of every kind of nexus thinking now. I think yes, it's very useful because the climate change is a huge reality, but we must also not hide behind it, because sometimes there are other things we need to do, and there are other relationships that we need to explore. So I think that we have to be very thoughtful on what it is we wish to achieve in terms of programming, and then we should pick up that which is important. This week, there have been like 13 or 14 conferences on climate in Karachi, and most of them, if you see the kind of matter or substance they were looking at, it's just repeating platitudes. So there can be an overstatement of climate as part of the programming nexus and helping people that we are all trying to do.
Thanks, and Simi, please.
Thank you. This question is for first presenter, Saima and Nazir. So I'm interested that you mentioned the gap on the with policy integration. So if the policy, usually we have to let people know and how to implement. There is a demo or implementation in the field. And when we are discussing implementation in the field, there are multiple actors. And every actor, usually they need funding or sometimes support from the maybe government or from the donor and other. My question is how to integrate them on their working on the field, because we need people on community support on the implementation. My experience, when we are working in the field, there are different donor and different timeline on funding disbursement. My question is how to work with the kind of the modality that if we want to integrate all of this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yes, my question is related to the NEP and NDC. You mentioned that you have the NEP and NDC. So how you are making the strategy to raise the finance to implement those documents?
I have also touched this aspect a little bit in the presentation, but due to time constraint, I was not able to explain. Actually, in the case of Pakistan, Ministry has a document that is NDC, in which we have already identified our mitigation and adaptation priorities. How we are integrating it within our system, this is the question. Firstly, our planning, Ministry of Planning, Commission and Special Initiative is a very important department, which has planning departments in the provinces and go on. So for budget tagging for climate change within our planning, we are coming up from the Ministry of Planning. We are already screening all of our projects which are coming in Pakistan through public sector, any other financing, whether it is a climate resilient, it integrates climate action within it, and then I will answer your question that how we are financing. There we are also tracking that if the project is ready with readiness, then we go for blended finance. There are financing like carbon credits, carbon markets, GCF, JF adaptation, whatever. But first of all, we need the readiness. Now we are on the readiness stage when we are screening all our projects. Every project, if it is a wash project, it is a road project, transport project, it should be green. It should have mitigation, it should have adaptation, it should have resilience, it should be a climate action instrument. Number one. Number two, we talk about donor projects. Donors, if I talk about them as a head donor, World Bank, UN, I mentioned already that there is a priority setting by the government. Government has identified a document that is in NDC NAP. It is there. Now donors have to align their priority within that, because UN agencies, donor partners are supporting the government to implement our NDC within the country, which is our nationally determined contribution, how we are going to control our emission, how we are going to adopt this climate change. But the challenge here is we don't have capacities. We need to strengthen these capacities. We need the hand from our donors to develop these capacities for developing such kind of projects which are sensible, include mitigation, adaptation, climate resilience. So this is how actually the government of Pakistan is doing. We are coming with the Ministry of Planning. We are coming with the Ministry of Finance, which is Plan for Prosperity. It is a document of the Ministry of Finance, which is built with consultation, technical consultation with the Ministry of Climate Change, and it helps us to understand how we can finance every project, every initiative sensibly, including climate resilience adaptation.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Dr. Ali Asghar and working as GM R&D, Senior Aviation Study. Panels cheers good experience, but I think we are all educated. Everybody know about the mitigations, measures, and even adaptation. Even Simi mentions about the global warming ultimately affect the hydrology cycle, and these I just like climate stroke drought, floods, and heat waves the cause of only single death pertain with the climate, pertain the greenhouse gases. But we are almost here, we are talking about the adaptation. Everybody, because we are beggars, we are begging from the World Bank and other donor agencies, we can defend our infrastructures, we will construct shelter houses and related. Especially my questions related with Lisa, because he's lot of the experience at the global level. This issue is not about Pakistan locally. This is global issue because why? Because this who is created this climate change development is what is role of the donors agencies. Why not they are playing key role for the mitigation measures instead of the giving the funds a lot for the adaptation. So looking today, our Chief Minister mentions we have received $950 million. This is billion rupees for constructions of the houses. But Lisa can elaborate it how can we can achieve, how we can control this climate change and reduce CO2 and other greenhouse elements. Both two, because you have good experience related with climate change, you should focus on climate, because yes, nexus between adaptation and mitigation, where we are well aware about the adaptation, we are funding from your bank and other agencies, at least you can give response on it. Thank you.
So I'll keep it brief, but I'll try to share some few reactions to this, right? So I think first of all, whether it's adaptation or mitigation, it requires a system level of thinking. And I feel like that's the key gap right now in terms of how we deal with development, right? To give you an example, right? If you're looking at, let's say if we're looking at flood resilience, right? There is a resilience in the sense of, okay, resilience of bigger infrastructures, like energy infrastructure, roads, schools, hospitals, and then the housings for the community level. And then there's also the financial resilience, the potential financial losses which could be created due to non-resilient and non-prepared systems in place. So when we're designing programs, we really, and this is I think speaking to what Saima said, is donors have a role to play, is to bring all the relevant stakeholders together to think about the system way of development, right? What we typically do is, okay, we have we have an energy team working the bank, and then they're interacting with the energy ministry, right? And then we have a climate team interacting with Ministry of Climate Change, and then vice versa. So when we're thinking about disaster mitigation or adaptation, we feel very siloed in that sense. Okay, I'm focusing on energy project, I'm only gonna look at my energy project, right? So this is the kind of thinking that needs to move away, because when we develop these programs, we need to think about the potential risk that can emerge from upcoming disasters, from that aspect. Even if I'm developing an energy project, I need to think about if there's a huge flood that will damage my key infrastructure, how do I continue to provide services? How do I maintain these equipments? How do I, recover the cost which will happen during the disaster event? And how do I manage that from the cost recovery point of view? And then, of course, there are a lot of these nexus that happens in mitigation efforts. So for instance, if we have a sustainable food system, that will not just contribute to, resilient production of agricultural products, but it also contributes to, better managed methane, better managed livestock, which also contributes to mitigation. Of course, we have to acknowledge Pakistan is not a big emitter in terms of GHG health, right? But the impact is still there in terms of air pollution, in terms of other environmental impacts on the ground. So it's not just about mitigation per se. As I mentioned before, if we're doing, let's say reforestation or forestation and nature-based solutions like mangroves, you can generate carbon credits. You can basically provide a livelihood that can support local communities to generate income. They can get paid for that. They can maybe support fishery in the community. So it also provides economic development activities for them. So I don't really see mitigation as a way of, we have the responsibility, so we must do it, but it's just a natural shift. And we are shifting towards renewable, and whether we like it or not, it's going into that direction. And as you can see in Sindh, Sindh has a huge potential for green kind of projects, right? Reforestation, forestation, which can also create job opportunities for the local community. So I think we have to really think about what is the outcome of the development project we wanted to do, and bringing the relevant stakeholders from all the sectors, not just the sector that you were maybe in touch with. And that's often the challenge, is to bring everyone on the same page to achieve a bigger goal. Because the easy thing is to do is just to, I'm a DRM person, I only talk to NDMA and PDMA, my job is done, right? So I think additional efforts needs to be made in that sense to bring everyone into the same conversation.
Sorry, this is not answer my question because it's looking at CO2 anti conference. They are supporting the bank if they can discuss funds to affected countries. But my focus is why not wanting pushing those countries like developed countries. They are major creator of climate change greenhouse gases. This my questions related you because you are expert of the climate change. So how can we control through the mitigation layer? Because like if you are giving the funds for development, there is high floods. We complete infrastructure of the irrigation system, and we are because I am working in the projects of the World Bank 3 or 4 projects currently. When we complete enhance embankments, other parts next year's heavy floods coming and destroy everything, we will again request the World Bank for the funding, for adopting and for update. So our case, because you are playing key is the mediator between those developed countries and the developed countries. But what should be focused on developed countries, they can reduce greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, and other greenhouse gases. So that's my questions. But bank is no role because pushing the developed countries. Because we know, because we are underdeveloped countries, how can it adopt? But we have no funds because we are repeatedly working on developed countries and we are receiving the funds, hard funds from the bank.
Yeah, so just in the spirit of the time, I think one of the nature of the work that we do is that we focus, our work is focusing on for developing countries. I mean, first of all, the developed countries are our donors, not our client. But I think more importantly, we do focus on mitigation projects in some of these countries, such as Mongolia, India. We are working on mitigation projects, so not just on adaptation.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. Thanks a lot. Big thanks to the audience for your attention. Big thanks to our panelists for the passion about this topic. And now it's time to wrap up this session because we have more sessions that I hope you are going to enjoy. Big thanks again to all of you and have a beautiful day. Take care.